Behind every great legend in history stands an exceptional story. This is the case for John Luther Casey Jones. Casey was born March 4th, 1863, to Frank and Ann Nolan Jones in an area near Casey, Kentucky. It is widely thought that this is where he got his nickname Casey from. At the tender age of 15, Jones went to work for the Mobile and Ohio Railroad as a telegrapher. He was then transferred in the company to the Columbus, Kentucky to Jackson, Tennessee route, where he was hired as a flagman and then promoted to brakeman. Through his demanding work, Jones was again promoted to serve as fireman and worked on the Mobile, Alabama route. Because of this promotion, Jones moved to Jackson, Tennessee. While staying at the boarding house in Jackson, Casey met and married Mary Joanna Janey Bradley. Because she was Catholic, he decided to convert to the faith and was baptized on November 11, 1886, at the St. Regis Catholic Church in Whistler, Alabama. They were then married on November 25, 1886, at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Jackson, Tennessee. He was a teetotaler and never drank alcohol, and was a devoted, family-oriented person. Casey saved his money, and with his earnings, they bought a house in Jackson, Tennessee, and settled down in married life. Together, Casey and Janey had 3 children, Charles Jones, Helen Jones McKenzie, and John Lloyd Jones. Now, having a family to support and seeing great opportunities for advancement in the career that he loved, Jones began moving up in the railroad system. During the summer of 1887, there was a sudden outbreak of the yellow fever in the Mississippi River Valley. The mosquito-borne illness is unwittingly carried by individuals who worked for the railroad system. While many became extremely ill or died, the epidemic left a demand for workers on the railroad routes, an open path for quick advancement in the companies. A demand for a fireman in the Illinois Central Railroad, or the IC, came open, and Jones leaped for the chance for advancement. On March 1st, 1888, Jones on the Jackson and Water Valley route became a fireman on the freight locomotive. Jones achieved one of his goals when on February 23, 1881, he was recognized for his talent and he was promoted to engineer. He became well known as the best engineer in the business. On March 10, 1881, Casey's name appears on the register of books for the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers. It was said that Jones was so punctual that you could set your watch by him. He was never behind schedule and always arrived at the destinations on time. Casey Jones worked in Jackson, Tennessee with the freight service line between Jackson, Tennessee and Water Valley, Mississippi. Both locations were always busy and had especially important stops along the route for the IC Company. Jones had developed close relationships with workers along the route between 1890 and 1900. Having the reputation for making all his stops on time came with risks. 9 citations issued by the Illinois Central Railroad gave Jones a total of 145 days, about 5 months of suspension. It was well known at the time that unofficially the rules for being late were far harsher than the ones for breaking the rules for being too speedy. However, Jones did not have a rule infraction the last year of his life. Casey Jones' train had a whistle that was made of 6 thin tubes bound together. The shortest tube was half the length of the longest tube. Jones was very well known in the area for his trademark way that he blew the whistle to make it sound like the bird call of a whippoorwill. The whistle, as it is described, it started off with a long-drawn, soft whistle that grew in sound. After it peaked, it would die off into a whisper. Jones loved baseball and watched or participated in the game whenever his schedule would allow it. He had played during the 1800s at Columbus, Kentucky, while he worked at the Mobile and Ohio Railroad as a club operator. The Water Valley Shop team was due to play baseball one Sunday in 1898, and Jones got to haul the team to Jackson for the game. The summer of 1893, the World's Columbian Exposition had come to Chicago, Illinois. This was attracting huge crowds to Chicago on the lake side of the grounds, which was I.C. Railroad's territory, and was quickly overwhelming the trains. A call went out in the company for engineers to come and help with the load of transporting thousands of passengers. Casey volunteered to go. He then ran the suburban service from Van Buren Street to Jackson Park that summer. Illinois Central had their new train on display at the fair. Hailed as having the latest and greatest of all the technological advancements in trains, the 638 boasted an 8 drive wheels and 2 pilot wheels. It was a 280 consolidation type. The 638 was due to go into service in the Jackson, Tennessee area after the fair had closed. Jones had asked permission for the new train to be sent to the Water Valley and to drive the train to its new destination. The request was approved. The number 638 ran its first 539 miles with Casey Jones at the helm. Jones was able to work on the 638 until late into the 1890s. Casey was able to do extra work on the passenger runs and was offered much shorter working days with better pay and considerable prestige. And as a bonus, the passenger train runs helped him stay closer to his family. John Wesley McKinney was a good friend of Casey's, and the two men worked together exclusively until Jones transferred to the Memphis line in 1890. In our next post, we will cover the Casey Jones transfer to the passenger Memphis line. We will also cover the rescue of a little girl that would forever put him into history books, as well as being spoofed in movies.